Like I mentioned earlier, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is a broadcast legend, all right? And when I say legend, you know me, I don't throw the word legend out there loosely like that. So it's a broadcast legend is what I'm going to say. A voice you will not and cannot forget for those people who've been dialed into radio, all right? And a name that's not just credible for reggae radio, but radio as a whole. I'm talking about broadcaster, curator, music journalist, and now podcaster, Mr. Dermot Hussey. And of course, the podcast is called Riffin' Podcast with Dermot Hussey. Mr. Dermot Hussey, can you hear me, sir?
Loud and clear.
Welcome to Homegrown with G. Cole. And thanks
Thank you,
again.
my friend. Good to be here.
Pleasure. When I mentioned that I'm going to be speaking with you, a lot of folks hit me up, and you would have thought, you know what I mean? You would have thought I said, hey, I'm going to talk to Bob Marley from the Zion Graves. You know what I mean? Because everybody that hit me up were like, what? You mean the Dermot Hussey? And all they keep talking about is the voice. So have you patented and copyrighted that voice yet, sir?
Not really, it's just something that evolved over time. Because if you listen to any of the podcasts that I'm currently putting out, you'll hear how young I sound.
That is true. And I have been ranging.
Right. So it's something that came over time in terms of, shall we say, a deepening of the tone. But yeah, I'm glad that people find the voice to be something they can recognize, because I think it's important in communication to be able to connect with people in some kind of way. And if one can connect vocally, then the rest should be quite easy. Then you follow up with what you have to say.
Yes, that is true. Now, I'm doing a segment called The Other Side of the Microphone, and I think it's very, very important, because when we talk about, I spend a lot of time talking about reggae music and dancehall music too, but the culture as a whole. And one of the important sides of it, which though we utilize, I think we underappreciate, is the side of radio, right? Especially in these days now when we have that whole digital era. But you've worked on Radio Jamaica, you've worked on JBC, the Jamaican Broadcasting Corporation, and also the BBC from my research here. So you've covered a wide landscape in radio, from Jamaica to the US to the UK. What I always wonder in a situation like this is, how different is radio, is UK radio from American radio, from Jamaican radio?
Well, American radio is largely based on the kind of top 40 format. And so it established itself, and it kind of created its own kind of brand. When you go across to a place like Europe, although that's changed now because you have BBC One Extra with Sir David Radigan and other broadcasters. So they're kind of more popular and also a little more modern in their outlook.
Right.
But America was really the hub for commercial radio, and they have been able to dominate it with a certain kind of product. But the Europeans, what you get is perhaps a more considered approach. A parallel in America would be like NPR.
Right.
You see?
Gotcha.
Where the people are striving for quality and content.
Right. Gotcha. And Jamaican radio?
Well, Jamaican radio was great. I worked at JBC when Errol Thompson was around, Winston Barnes, Free Eye, who was Jeff Dixon. And so it was a very exciting period. JBC, RJR was also important in that it was more the commercial aspect of radio, whereas JBC was kind of more cultural, more nationally oriented in terms of its content. but it
Gotcha.
was all very exciting. I think the change came with Barry G when the the gap between radio and the dance hall was narrowed.
Right. Right.
And I think Barry was largely the person responsible for doing that. And then, of course, what followed was the emergence of the selector.
On radio.
Yes, as against the broadcaster.
I got you. I got you. And it's amazing you mentioned that because as I've always had conversations about radio, I've always felt like right now we have this issue where we can't differentiate sometimes the broadcaster from the selector. And I feel like a lot of, in trying to get the popularity, what a lot of entities do is they'll go into the dance hall and they'll find the selector from the dance hall who has a following, bring them to the radio. But it's two different elements. And a lot of people don't know how to merge that or bridge the gap. And we talk about today's young people doing it. But, as you mentioned there, and now that I think about it even some more, you are absolutely correct. It was really, Barry G. We won't blame anybody, but if we're going to pass it,
No, it's just a historical marker.
Exactly, exactly. I wonder all the time. I always say the chef normally can't appreciate the cooking of others, and that's from experience. I'll go out with somebody who's a chef, and all they do is they can't appreciate the cooking of others. How do you feel about radio whenever you do tune in, and if at all you tune into radio these days?
I don't hear radio that much, but I used to listen to NPR a lot. When I was in DC, I listened to them a lot because I like the content and I like the variety of things that they kind of broadcasting, which I like because I know that the popular approach goes for the mass audience, but I am more concerned at this point in my life with quality rather than quantity.
Right. I definitely
And
understand.
I think it's possible to serve both, to be entertaining, but also to be provocative. Because the point is that radio is the way that a lot of people become socialized. And
Yes.
so, in many ways, what you have is a captive audience.
Right. True.
And so you can educate, you can uplift. It doesn't have to be the lowest common denominator in order to get the widest listenership.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a misconception with when it comes to broadcasting these days. And we're going to radio from then till now. I'm definitely trying to capitalize on the history, on the legacy, on the knowledge. I always feel like just like some politicians almost feel entitled to the black vote. Reggae has kind of felt entitled to and has been sustained by the diaspora. It's a conversation I was having yesterday, but I always felt like outside of a Beres, outside of a Marcy, outside of a Freddie, the diaspora hasn't necessarily been there for others in terms of holding up that music. Talk to me a little bit about the diaspora and as it pertains to reggae music and how it impacts sales and just overall popularity.
Well, I think reggae has reached the level now where it has become increasingly popular as a world music, separate and apart from the term world music. It has become more global in its outreach, largely because of this tremendous role that Bob Marley played and other reggae artists. I think the Europeans are still perhaps the most perceptive and the most serious about it, but America is still the big reggae market.
Right.
This is the big reggae market. When you make it here, you have made it.
Right.
Africa is also another great home for the music. And you see, for instance, how an aspect of popular Jamaican music, namely dancehall, inspired Afrobeats.
Right.
In fact, the Africans are very clever. They listened to dancehall, adopted it, and then put their own rhythmic spin on it.
Right.
And now you see what has happened with Afrobeat, how it has blown up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and not just Afro beats, but it's funny you mention that. And sometimes I don't know if I attribute it to just a wide demographic and pretty much just numbers, because we see Afrobeats is the youngest one. Prior to that was the reggaeton movement, where they took one rhythm and kind of cascaded that into a whole bunch of songs, and they've had a lot of commercial success. Because reggae to me has spiritual success. It's spiritually ingrained in us, but it doesn't see that commercial success, at least not anymore. We saw reggaeton has achieved a lot of commercial success, but of course that could be largely attributed to the wide Latin audience that's consuming it. Afro beats is doing that right now. We can attribute it to the continental Africa being so huge. But the diaspora is big. Jamaicans as a whole, as their presence outside of Jamaica is huge. What do you think is the reason why and when I say we, I mean reggae music that comes from Jamaica, because there is success coming from reggae music that comes from other places. What do you think is the reason why reggae music from Jamaica doesn't see that commercial success, at least not anymore?
Well, it could be a variety of things. It could be the music that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
It could be also that the people who make the music don't seem to understand the market. You have to understand the market that you're tailoring music for.
Right.
The scattershot approach,
Mm-hmm.
that can't work anymore. There was a time when it could work for a period. So, I think because we are now faced with stiffer competition,
Mm-hmm.
that the Americans, more than any other time that I've ever seen, are more involved in reggae music
Right.
than I've ever seen before. And you have to also give them credit, because when we had kind of turned our back, the younger generation in Jamaica, and more leaning towards dance hall,
Mm-hmm.
the Americans took up 70s reggae and kept it alive.
True.
You
That's
know,
so true.
so what has happened now, they're able to dominate the market because they're here. They don't need a visa.
Right.
They also are prepared to work round the clock throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
They also have taken advantage of merchandise, and they also do a lot of do it yourself. So you had a lot of these American reggae groups
Mm-hmm.
who gave free shows, did everything. I mean, I look at groups like Soldiers of the Army. When, when they emerged, they came to us in DC at XM satellite radio, and we said, okay, we're going to take you under your wing like a little group.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, before you know it, they'd blown up. The biggest reggae group in Brazil. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. And
So
you
you
saw it
see,
from inception. Wow.
yeah. So it's a tricky situation right now because Jamaicans are having to compete
Right.
on every level. In Europe, you have a situation where the Europeans have become so good at playing it that they tell the Jamaicans, we don't need you to bring a band anymore.
Yep.
In fact, we pay you more if you come without a band, because we have a band here who can back you.
Right.
And the band can play authentic reggae.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's a very challenging situation, and there's a lot of frustration. And then the pandemic hasn't helped
Yeah.
because the music, which relied largely on touring as the source of the artist's revenue,
Right.
that has dried up, and now we're being forced to produce more music and then try and find the channel of streaming, which is where new kinds of opportunities in terms of income are emerging.
Yeah. Wow. and,
But
and
you mentioned Panama, and
mm-hmm,
the story goes that it was Higgler who used to that Skellion run to Panama,
mm-hmm.
took the music down there, and El General, them bow, them bow, them bow. You remember he did,
Yep. Yep.
and that's where the what's his name, Diego Calderon in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
He heard that and ran with it.
Hence the birth of reggaeton.
Yeah, that's where it happened.
Yeah. And I think sometimes and maybe it's just patriotism, it's passion, it's frustration why we think that other people just have the opportunities that we don't have. But I see the work that's put in. You speak of the work that the Latin artists have put in. I remember my band and I doing the circuit, and we'd be in venues where most of the bands that are mega right now, those American reggae bands, we're talking about the Tribal Seeds, the Through the Roots, we're talking about the
Right,
Revolutions and stuff
right.
like that. They would come into tone and they'd be putting the work in. And we'd be there. We learned a lot from them because we would merch, because we saw them merch and we said, that's how it goes. You can get more revenue from that than you even get from the sales of the music. And whenever we were
Yeah.
there opening for reggae bands, which I'm talking about big name reggae bands, so-called
Hmm.
legends, they didn't do literally the work. They'd come in and they'd do the music and then they would go. They did not exhibit that grind that the other bands did. So a lot of times when we're upset and we say, well, act like it's been given to them, then that kind of is not true. So I agree with you 100%. And even right now with the pandemic, people have started to tour on smaller circuits. I see Tribal Seeds is
Mm.
out there, and a lot of these bands from America are out
Right,
there, but
right.
they don't need a visa. So you're absolutely right. You know,
I think one of the blows that we also have suffered in music, reggae, is the fact that the Sierra Nevada World Music Festival is, what his name, I think, died, the producer. Named Selector, and that was a very important platform for reggae in the summer.
right, right.
But reggae is still seen as a summer music by a lot of Americans.
Yeah, yeah.
We haven't been quite able to break out of that mold, because also we perpetuate it because Jamaicans don't really want to come here when it's cold. You understand? So they come
True,
here when it's warm. And
true.
so that also reinforces the perception. Oh, well, the summer music, when
Right.
we go to the beach, we go into the beach in the summer, turn up the sound.
People don't realize that that's where the term. People think that the term beach reggae is white boy reggae from California, but the truth is that's where the term beach reggae comes from. The fact that we only came up in the summertime when people are going to the beach and literally, like you said, cranking up the sound.
Yes, yes, man. Yes, yes.
Amazing, amazing. And we refer to dancehall music as, when the youth were getting into the dancehall music, and to some degree we can always say abandon, I'll say it, the foundation music. Dancehall does take up more space in the hearts of young Jamaicans now than does reggae, based on my observation.
Yes,
You know,
really. Yeah, yeah.
now based on what you're hearing musically speaking, is dancehall at all poised to have that kind of impact on the international music space, whether it be radio or sales wise, or it's just that entertaining
Well,
music?
I think dancehall is possible. This is possibly the strongest representation of it that I've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It has a magazine at its disposal, Dancehall Mag,
Mm-hmm.
which is constantly putting out stuff. You've seen the emergence of the women like Spice and Shensia.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the numbers that they have in social media,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's it tells you that something is going on there.
Right.
And a parallel, of course, is the dominance of the women in athletics as well.
Right. Right.
You know, but still, we have a long way to go because when you look and the statistics that Cardi B has 140 million followers.
You know, we talk about the Cardi B's of the world and other artists and stuff like that because when I ask this question a lot, why is reggae struggling? a lot of times I hear, especially from the legends, from people who are tenured in the business, I hear the contrary, right? I hear them talking about the message not in the music and the lyrics and so forth. But truth be told, the people who are succeeding don't have message in their music, right?
Well, true.
So that's something that I've seen. And you just mentioned also, as far as the music goes, you know, a lot of the people say dance hall. We herald 90s dance hall. I do too, as the best era. I think it's because that's when the time we had the most artists signed to major labels. But they use the 90s era as the benchmark. But like you said, dancehall is having what I would deal a huge popularity success right now. I just don't know if it's translating into sales.
Into sales. That's the key. Because you see, for instance, that when they come out with albums, even Vibes Cartel, Spice, it shot up into the top of the chart, but it drops off very shortly after that.
Right.
So it seems that it's not really physical sales, but it's streaming is where the money is. And also, I think we have to be more careful about the kind of understanding making music for the market.
Right.
That is a key thing. You can't just go in and make music and say, oh boy, let's do a thing and throw it out there.
Yes.
No. More than likely it's going to flop. This thing is like a science, boss.
People are making music for their friends. Sometimes when you listen to it, you're like, okay, you're making some music for your virgin them because your virgin them said this music is nice, but in all honesty, are your virgin going out there to stream it and to buy it? You know?
There you go. Yeah, man. Seriously.
Now, let me ask you this, because there's satellite radio out there that some years ago, I said some years ago, it's been a minute now, but you know, time flies so fast. When I first heard about satellite radio was going to be a thing, and you are one of a very minute, and I say minute in caps, amount of personalities on satellite radio doing a reggae format. Now, for those people who are listening to us here on HD radio and any other format, explain to the masses who don't already know, if there are any that don't already know, what exactly satellite radio is.
Well, satellite radio was the first really big development in broadcasting since FM was introduced.
Right.
And because normally a radio signal is transmitted via a series of transmitters that are land-based. Satellite radio beams a signal up to a satellite, and that signal is then transmitted, interestingly, around on a land-based transmitter.
Right.
So when satellite radio came in via Sirius, which was based in New York, XM, which was based in DC, and then you had a merger in of both companies in 2008. It was a serious breakthrough, and you know, one of the things to be said on behalf of Americans in terms of their credit is that they were willing and open to spending money to buy a radio and go down the road of subscription.
Right.
A lot of people say, oh boy, nobody's going to pay for radio.
Right.
Because most people had been conditioned to accept that, oh, you switch it on and it's there.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
So it's really a tribute to Americans that satellite radio, which has this amazing reach, especially in terms of a platform for the music. It's the greatest reggae platform that you have, really, because all the other stations are regional and do not have a national footprint.
Right. So satellite radio can listen anywhere in the nation as long as you've got the subscription, be it XM, Sirius.
Right. And it's basically it's for your car, but you also can have it inside the house. I mean, you also have apps that you can get. So it's the way satellite radios come now, where you have almost 35 million subscribers.
Right, right.
It's is phenomenal,
Wow, wow.
and it's growing. You know, so in terms of reggae, although the joint now is coming only on the CSXM app, I think that it's still one of the greatest channels
Right.
that the music has been able to acquire.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And it's subscription radio. When we talk about subscription and the fact that it actually succeeds and it works when most people thought it wouldn't, I think it's the same thing that when streaming came about. When streaming came about, and
There you are. Good parallel. Yeah.
Apple Music started, people, because I remember when I said, I'm not streaming music because, yes, I'm paying to have access to every song in the world, but do I really listen to every song in the world? And then 2 weeks later, I was a customer. So, that's kind of how it works. But when it comes to streaming music from a streaming platform, any one of those DSMs, be it Spotify, be it Apple Music, be it whomever, artists, the benefit is great, but the revenue is not necessarily so unless you're streaming in mass numbers, because I think the math is probably maybe about 14, 15 streams is equivalent to one download or stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
Does subscription radio benefit the artist though as much? We talk about benefiting the listener, but does subscription radio benefit the artist as much as regular radio?
Well, I think, for instance, if you have a playlist on the satellite framework,
Mm-hmm.
which is constantly got your music in rotation,
Mm-hmm.
I think you would benefit more in terms of receiving royalties for a kind of continued airplay.
Right.
Whereas with the other stations, you get play once in a while.
True.
You see, because the playlist on the satellite network is computer generated.
Right. Gotcha.
You see, so you have a system where it is constant in rotation until you take it out.
Right.
Whereas with other stations now, they may give you 2 or 3 plays here, then you have a period when you don't get much play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a consistency that you can be guaranteed a greater revenue
I got you.
from the satellite network than you would from the what they call terrestrial. The term is terrestrial, which means that it's kind of land-based,
Right.
whereas the satellite is in the atmosphere,
Right.
generated by a satellite, and then the signal retransmitted by the transmitter based on the ground.
Right. Wow. And the other thing, as you mentioned that too, I think of integrity in radio, because integrity in radio can probably be upheld a little bit more, or a lot more, on satellite radio versus terrestrial radio, where you have the payola situations, or let me play my virgin music, especially that Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which kind of stated that, what was it, like 4
Right.
songs by the same artist cannot be played during a 3-hour period. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was specifically for satellite radio, right?
Yes, yeah, and in fact it was a kind of difficult in a way, because it kind of stymied, just a free kind of play, but we have had to learn to live with it.
Right.
I think it was when Bill Clinton was president that Digital Millennium Copyright Act was passed.
Mm-hmm.
You can sometimes get a waiver.
Right.
But it depends, because you could actually ask a record company if they wanted to give you a waiver to play their product. Then there are instances where that could be acceptable.
Gotcha. So you can circumvent it. You just have to take the appropriate measures.
I would think, yeah, man.
Right. Now, we it's one thing when you have conversations with music, especially reggae music, with the insiders and the people who are on the cusp of things in terms of the metrics versus just the artists and the average ear out there. Some years ago, you're probably familiar with a study, the National Endowment for the Arts, which it's about how many people.
Oh, you know that study, okay.
Yeah, I looked into it some time ago, and just I found it so relevant when they checked, where the demographic is that's listening to reggae. You know what I mean? What's the age group and so forth. And but that at that time that was recording a growth and saying, it's continuously growing and this demographic is growing and so forth. But when I talk to artists right now, everybody's got the Down syndrome, like, well, no, it ain't growing, everything is down. From those metrics and those research, do you think reggae is still on a growth and upward trajectory, or have we plateaued in terms of the world space?
I think you're probably plateaued. I don't see where any expansion is taking place. The thing about it is that the young generation, the successive generation, it's going to take them time to kind of find the stride. I mean, the protege chronic generation, I think you have to give them time.
Right.
They've been able to achieve a lot of ground. Even the young women, the Lila Ikes and the Savannahs and the
Naomi's.
Right. I think they've been able to find a position for themselves. But because the music is so widely kind of dissipated now, you have the Americans who you have groups like Stick Figure.
Yeah.
That was rough. When you look at how the kind of shows they draw, or even Revolution, or the Green from Hawaii,
J-Bo.
it's a different thing now. And so, maybe we have to start looking to other markets. China.
Right.
Africa is still a good market, but people always talk about how they get their money.
Right. It's a lot of untilled soil out there. It's if you had told me 10 years ago that, and from a reggae standpoint, that the U.S. was going to be that market, that was so necessary in the success of reggae artists, I don't know how much I would agree, because at that point, what we would see is non-Jamaican artists that were doing well were from Europe. You're talking about the Gentlemans of the world and the Patriots of the world and the Albarozes of the world. It was coming from that side. But then we saw that surge of the American bands, and I kind of feel like there was a gap left on the U.S. turf when the reggae acts of Jamaica started to try to conquer Europe and try to conquer the UK, not realizing how small, because the US and the UK, Europe and the UK probably is not even a third of the US, So I don't know if that attributed to it.
Yeah, because look, on the biggest the reggae festival in America now is the Roots and Arts Festival in Cali, Roots and Arts Festival in Monterey. And like I said, Sierra Nevada, which was kind of more open to bringing in more reggae acts, they're no longer on the calendar.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah. I don't know what the answer is. People just have to still try and make the best music you can.
Yeah, and they are actually trying to put a footprint over there in Europe too, because when you look at the calendar for the major festivals here in the US, not even, and who would have thunk it, not even the Marley names are the headliners anymore for the US circuit. And when you look at the on the European circuit and the UK circuit, yes, the Jamaican names are there. It's not the Marley names, right? But the Jamaican names are there. But I see that little infusion where the American bands are crossing over because they're being accepted over there too. No.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a real thing, man.
Oh yeah. Now you're the voice. You're the broadcaster. As far as I'm concerned, you're the broadcaster that the broadcasters looked up to. right? Or look up to. Who did you look up to on radio when you started?
Um, I think people like Neville Hall was somebody who I admire very much. The way he worked. Uh, Let me see now. I'm trying because Adrian Robinson, yeah. Reggie. There was so many people that a lot that were on air um, that used to listen to and watch the delivery. Even my friend Neville Willoughby, in terms of the work that he did.
Right.
You know, I think somebody who too I also heard early on was Fred Wilmot, who I worked with eventually because I also worked in public relations at the Jamaica Tourist Board. There's another side of me which a lot of people don't perhaps know that I worked at the Glean as a news reporter.
Wow.
I worked at JBC as a news editor, and then the strike came in '64.
Right.
I also worked in film and television. So yeah,
Wow.
but in those days in radio, now that I reflect, Ira Aldridge, wow, I like Charles. Yeah, so there were a lot of people who were established, but I think if I think it took bits and pieces from various people. But I think the essential thing was to find your own sound, your own way of delivery.
Right. Right.
And also one of the things I realized that if you are in a market that is catering largely to, as I say, the top 40 format, which is like the basis or the kind of template
Right.
on which a lot of popular radio is built. I didn't really see myself in that arena. I wanted more to be like a communicator,
Gotcha.
using ideas, using music as a means of communication. So therefore, you're dealing with history, you're dealing with a kind of documentary approach in how you're presenting music and information. And so that's the road I traveled.
Gotcha.
And that is the reason why I'm able to be able to feel these podcasts now, because it's a 30-year archive of interviews that I'm putting out as podcasts.
Right. Right. And I have been enjoying because I've been binging on some of those podcast episodes, and I'm even going to ask you about a little bit of that. But what I always wonder is this: you've ventured into journalism on a wide scale. Working for the editorial sections of the Gleaner. You're talking about the TV and so forth. Where did the passion? Radio can be a thankless job. It can be a tireless job. You're the voice in the radio. A lot of times people hear the voice, don't know the face, and some of those gratifications and the perks that come from TV and other things aren't necessarily there, at least not immediately. But where did the passion for radio come from for you?
I think, again, because in 1967, when I came back to Jamaica from London after doing this television course with BBC, and also I did a film for a year at the London School of Film Technique. I came back to Jamaica as a producer in radio. And the first program that I started to do on RJR was a jazz program called Jazz Unlimited. And then I decided to kind of look more into an area of producing. So when Don Drummond died in 1969, I did a program called Requiem to Don Drummond. in
Gotcha.
which I was able to get people like Coxon, Prince Buster, to talk about Don Drummond, Jimmy Carnegie, um, who else was on it? Tommy McCook,
Wow.
and so I realized that here's an area where I could expand
Hmm.
because it needed to be done.
Right.
You know, it needed to have somebody who was looking at it from a slightly different angle and trying to put things together. And so I just started doing more and more of that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, a guy, a guy some years ago sent me uh, a list of how many artists I introduced in Jamaica, and it freaked me. I didn't realize.
Wow. Wow. And if you're listening to the podcast, I mean, some of the talking to the Quincy Jones of the world, the Ray Charles of the world. So it's not just a reggae thing. And that is one thing that I appreciated about you is that sometimes people say, I love music. When truthfully what they're saying is, I love reggae or I love dancehall.
Right. But you see, I was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I went once as a youngster, at about 18, 19. My parents took in a boarder.
Mm-hmm.
Because nowadays, when you had an extra room, you'd rent it out.
Right.
So a guy came, I never forget this guy. His name was Royal McPherson. He had a tremendous record collection,
Wow.
but he didn't have a player. So he asked my parents if he could come into the drawing room and play stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I got hooked. Because he played everything. He had Count Basie, he had Louis Jordan, he had,
Wow.
and my ears just tuned into it right away, and I never looked back. I just ran with it. And then when I went to Jamaica College, there was a jazz band there.
Right.
So I said, wow. So my interest, and then also a trip to Haiti in 1958 kind of focused me on rhythm.
Right.
Because when you're in Haiti, as it was then in 1950, at night,
Right.
all you hear is drums.
Wow. That compa drum. Wow.
Hey,
Right.
and so those kinds of impressions, and as well glimpses of another perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and that your ears could also follow it.
Right.
My ears, oh yeah, I just ran with it.
Wow. Wow. And you never look back.
No, and over the years, it just grew
Right.
because it was also about my growth musically, which while that was going on, I was also sharing it with the public.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, when I went to Brazil for the first time with Peter Tosh in 1980, I had already known about Brazilian music because I'd seen Black Orpheus,
Mm-hmm.
which is a film that I would recommend anybody to get a copy and see it.
Black Orpheus.
Because it has a sound, Black Orpheus, it has a soundtrack that is like equivalent to The Harder They Come
Wow.
in terms of a Brazilian film. Yeah.
Wow.
An amazing soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And, once I went to Brazil and saw how huge a reggae market it was.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think you know that Brazil is the only country that has declared a Bob Marley Day,
Yeah.
May 11th.
Yeah.
It's
in law.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. And I'm one of those people. I love looking in the rearview mirror because it gives me a glimpse into why you are who you are. Talk to me a little bit about what was the climate like for you as a young boy growing up in Kingston, Jamaica? What was the climate for you both musically and socially, and how did those coincide?
As a youngster, it was it was good because then in Jamaica, you had this sense of, boy, you live in an amazingly beautiful space. Um, you never had to worry about the kind of pressures and that subsequently came in Jamaica, the social conflict, and it was. I mean, the 50s was amazing. We saw it, said, "Wow, this can only get better."
Right.
Not knowing that we were actually living the best of it. But it was great, man. The freedom. Uh, just to, yeah, it was amazing. I mean, people who grew up that time will tell you
Right. Right.
how great it was. I mean, to be part of that landscape,
Right.
part of the culture. Um, then, of course, the music was at that time popular Jamaican music hadn't really emerged.
Right.
It was, you were getting a lot of mental and calypso, and of course the imported music.
Right. Right. Top 40 stuff.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, that was what the diet was, but it was extraordinary, man. The period.
Wow.
I even remembered well, this was more terrifying. The 19 a hurricane. I experienced a hurricane in Buff Bay. I can't remember the name because I was very young.
Right.
But it was terrifying because the wind was lifting the zinc off the roof as if somebody was taking the nails out with a hammer, man.
Wow. The infrastructure was not designed to accommodate.
No. It was extraordinary. But no, Jamaica, as a youngster, Jamaica was extraordinary, man.
Wow. Wow.
Extraordinary. People will tell you, I mean, just even climb a mango tree and just go up there and sit in the lap of a limb and pick a mango and just eat it right there.
Right. Right.
Simple pleasures like that, the beach, countryside was extraordinary.
Boy, you depressed me right now. You make me want to hop on a plane. Not just a flight to Jamaica, but the time machine to go back to those times.
Yeah. If you could.
Wow.
Extraordinary, man. Really extraordinary.
It's amazing when I hear people talk about, and ladies and gentlemen that's just joining us, I'm having a convo right now with the legendary Mr. Dermot Hussey, legendary broadcaster. You're my eyes and ears into that time frame. Amazingly enough, we talk about, whenever I hear about the best time, quality of life wise, it's always the 50s and the early 60s, pre what I would call the Reggae Revolution, when the social conflicts came out, which is like the 70s and 80s. And as we talk about content in music, because people always say, well, the reason why the music is not having the effect right now is because, the content. But as far as the impact of the 70s and the 80s reggae, when we had the Bobs and the Peter and the Bunny and the Jimmy Cliff and so forth, do you think it was the time? Right? It was the times that attributed to that. Today, people speak a lot about the content and the music, but I'm feeling like when we talk about Bob, if Bob Marley was born 1980 and came out with the same music, would it have the same effect? Because the times are different. We didn't have the upheavals. Those are revolutionary times, so it required revolutionary content. Now it's a little different. What do you think as far as the impact of the music then versus the impact of the music now?
Well, the thing is that the reggae emerged in 1968, which was almost the end of an extraordinary decade. The decade of the 60s, as you remember, they had so much political events, you had so much social events. I'm talking about globally now, civil rights movement, Black Power movement, all of which had an impact on Jamaica,
Right.
And so you had a period there. You had the Vietnam War, you had the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy. It was a period that was fraught with a lot of conflict and strife. But those things are what a lot of music thrives on
Right.
in terms of content. And so when reggae emerged at that period, uh, it was amazing because it came right at the end of this tremendous decade where you had, uh, you know, man, when you think about stuff like Nina Simone's work,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
uh, there's a great tune called "Is It Because I'm Black?"
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and then even Jimmy Cliff's Vietnam.
Yeah.
Uh, there's so many things. I mean, and so reggae was, I think, fueled. The strength of the music was fueled by that.
Right.
You know, you remember even Bob Marley, the Fire, Babylon Burning.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 1968 song as well.
Right.
So I think you had a ferment that was happening internationally, and a lot of it was also filtering down. Dr. Martin Luther King came to Jamaica, as you remember, and spoke I think, at the stadium, if
Right.
I'm not mistaken. You know, and I think that's when he talks about Marcus Garvey was the first great organizer.
Right.
So yeah, you had a kind of fueling of the music in terms of its headspace, the passion.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, the 70s were kind of for us a kind of period of political ferment,
Right.
democratic socialism, Michael Manley, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it was extraordinary, and they say by '77, reggae had peaked.
Right. So it is the music that is fueled by the times, and that's why I sometimes I wonder if it is fair when people expect certain things of reggae music right now. It's just that if there's no revolutions, there's no revolutions to talk about unless we're going to be nostalgic all the time, and you can only do so much of that. So that's something I
Exactly,
always
exactly. You can only look back so much.
amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. You see, I think what the music also requires is a kind of level of songwriting that's reading the times now and giving people insights and ideas.
Right.
I don't think you don't have that level of songwriting, but you get a one or two songs here and there.
Mm-hmm.
There's one young artist that I've been noticing recently, and I've very kind of taken interest in what he's doing. Yaxter.
Yaxter is amazing.
Yeah, I tell you something. That guy is one of the strongest young talents around now.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, and he's giving it to
So
you pure because he's not falling into the mold of. Because I always feel like there are ebbs and flows when it comes to reggae music. There are times like we had this time that people was referring to as the reggae revolution. I kind of refer to it as a renaissance because I see it as a, you know what I mean. It wasn't brand new, right? It wasn't brand new at all. So that's what I saw it as, and then you had the Proteges and the Chronics emerging from that one, and they addressed the times. And so what I appreciate about the Yaxter is that he gives us that content, but he's not necessarily in the mold of those guys, the Chronics, them, and so forth of the world. And I think having that
yeah,
variance is
very
important.
very individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to watch him, man, because I've been listening, and he's whoever is producing and putting out his stuff, the record label, even his videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got something.
Yeah. Artist to watch
I'm going
for.
to watch. a man to watch.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I've been, like I said, I've been listening to the podcast, and I've been having conversations recently about today's the attention span, and now it's a singles market, because we talk about that a lot. Does it make sense to put out albums? It's a singles market. And if you decide to do more than singles, is it not better to just do an EP? But amazingly enough,
Right.
I was listening to an interview that you did with Rita Marley. This is years ago. And you were
Yes,
speaking of the
yes.
same thing back then, in terms of you were asking Rita, it's a singles market. So pretty much, is it really necessary, or how does that affect you putting out an album? And I'm just saying to myself, well, it's like we're going up the down escalator. I'm talking about it like it's brand new now, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you were having this conversation with Rita Marley. How many more of our struggles that we think are new are pretty much just a modern version of an ancient struggle?
I think most of them. Yeah, yeah,
I was
Um,
amazed. I was amazed when I listened to that one. I said, "Isn't that what we make it sound like this is brand new?"
no, it's yeah, what it is. It's really generational. There's a different set of people experiencing it, so they think that it's wow, that it's happening with us,
Right,
but actually it's a repeat.
right, right. All cyclical, all cyclical.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Now, over the years, we've always heard about how politics played its part in music, and by music in terms of the creation of music, in terms of the topics, the content, and so forth. Did politics play a role in radio, and if so, how?
Well, I think politics played a role in the sense of um, interference with your freedom, broadcasting freedom. You had instances where certain tunes had to be banned because the government of the day felt that it was either comment that was unsuitable or um, treasonous. You know? So, you remember Ernie Smith's tune when we talked about Jack Kingdom gone to waste.
Yeah, yeah,
Songs like that were, I remember they were banned, and so you sometimes had political interference,
right, right.
so yeah,
Wow,
you
wow.
had to kind of, yeah, a lot of tunes, as you remember, even Bounty Killer's tune. Look,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, it was
yep,
banned at one time.
yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Nothing's new.
freedoms like broadcasting freedoms and general press freedoms are things you have to fight for and to also preserve
Right.
because political power, knows no boundaries.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And it's also one of those things that we think is off the day. When Killer was having his things banned, censorship is one thing, but we talk about ban, and then Sizzler later on had music banned, and everybody, Chuck Fender had music banned, and but they thought it was something new. But I'm like we said earlier, it's just a modern version of an ancient struggle. You've interviewed everybody, most of the people who were worth hearing, whether at the time people realized that or not. I've sat down and I've spoken to a lot of people. I have my preferences. I love talking to the legends, to the OGs, and just getting that ear, that heart, that mind that was in a place that I was too young to be. And I know how they impact me. When you do your interviews, and of all the interviews you've done, which one would you say impacted you most, not as a journalist, not as a broadcaster, but on a personal level?
I believe the interview I did with Bob Marley.
Wow.
Because, you know, it was at a time when Whalers had broken up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of words were flying around.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Tosh was saying this, Peter Tosh was saying that, and Bob was really upset.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had, you know, I'd been trying to get an interview with him, and he kept pushing me out, and nah, nah, nah. And I said, wow, wow. So I went to Skill Cole.
Mm-hmm.
I know Skill was tight with Bob. I said, Skill, I've been trying to, you know, because the Whalers had just broken up.
Right.
The last concert they played together in Jamaica was the Dream concert
Right.
in '75, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Skill said, all right, Bob has agreed, but he's not coming down to JBC. More to do it in a neutral studio. So I found another studio where Delroy Butler was the engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Bob was so heated. I mean, I could barely get in a word. You know? And I think that was perhaps the one of the best interviews I did, because I caught him at a moment when he had already seen that he was going to be a solo artist.
Right.
And I think in some ways as well, Chris Blackwell could say that would more than likely admit that he was responsible for breaking up the Whalers, because as a marketeer, he saw the potential in Bob,
Right.
you know, and himself and Peter never got on.
Mm-hmm.
Bunny was not interested really. His position was, look, you know, I'm not going out there to deal with Babylon on those terms.
Right. Right.
So I think, yeah, that interview was really the interview I never got with Miles Davis would have been great.
with Miles Davis.
Yeah, I
Wow.
met him. I met him in '85 in
Mm-hmm.
Ocho,
Mm-hmm.
and I went there to tape because I carried around a portable tape recorder like a notebook, like
Right.
a camera.
Right.
So I went in on him in this beach cottage that he was there with his road manager and his road manager's girlfriend, and you know, and he had a girl down with him as well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, you know, he said, well, how far are you coming from? I said, well, I drove about 58 miles. And he said, wow, I would have gone anywhere to hear Charlie Parker. So we sat down and, you know, started chatting. I even took him out snorkeling and showed him a few things and so on, you know, down by the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So now when I come with my tape recorder, I can't switch it off. And so, no, I'm not giving any interviews at this time.
After I did all that, after
Yeah. So I just had to pack it away and just chat with him. But yeah, that would have been a nice interview as well. I lost an interview I did with Duke Ellington because I think the tape I got erased, and Michael Manley gave me a brilliant evaluation of Peter Tosh.
mm-hmm.
And as luck would have it, what happened, I looked on the tape on a machine,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the pneumatic videotapes that we're using then in television.
Right.
Left it on the machine. Somebody came up, took out the tape, and it was erased recording something with Mr. Siaga.
Oh man.
Michael Myers was livid and said it was sabotage, but it was just one of these things.
Right. Right. I can see why.
Yeah,
I can see why he'd think so, though. I mean, anybody would.
yeah. He was very upset, but it was a brilliant analysis he did of his evaluation of Peter Tosh and the difference between Peter Tosh and Bob Marley.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
I'd have
So,
loved to hear that because he was such a great
oh,
speaker.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Michael was the man.
Yeah, he was a great speaker. A great
Yeah, and I
speaker.
think great music man as well. So we used to chat a little music now and then.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, before he passed, I did a program kind of in memory of him and just played. So, and he wrote me a nice letter just thanking me and all that.
Wow.
Although he was going at the
Right.
time.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Wow. History, ladies and gentlemen. History. No. I see here. I read somewhere that you eulogized Peter Tosh at his funeral. Is that accurate?
Yes, right, yeah.
So did you have a
Because,
relationship with Peter?
Yeah, man. I went to Brazil with him
Mm-hmm.
because Herbie Miller was my friend, was managing him at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the São Paulo festival in São Paulo, and then we came to Rio
Wow.
and spent. Oh man, we didn't want to leave Brazil.
Wow.
Brazil has changed a lot since then, But let me tell you something. Culturally,
Mm-hmm.
Brazil is a time bomb, man.
Wow.
I mean, it's a beautiful. We stayed in the same hotel overlooking the Ipanema beach, and the great song that is
Mm-hmm.
Girl from Ipanema.
Yeah.
We stood overlooking that beach.
Wow.
Peter was riding his unicycle.
In Brazil.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
He went over big.
Wow.
We went the opening show he did. He had about 8,000 people in the auditorium.
Right.
All of them egging him on to light the split, but Peter wouldn't light the split because he knew what the Brazilian police would do there.
Even though he is Peter Tosh, people talk about the stepping razor, people talk about him and the edge, but I don't think he's spoken of enough. And of course, when you have a figure like a Bob Marley, everything and everyone is going to be in the shadow.
Yeah,
right.
True.
But the person, the man, off the stage, outside of the studio, away from the microphone, what was Peter Tosh like? Was he that guy? Even off the stage?
Let me tell you, Peter Tosh was one of the funniest guys that could ever be around. I'll tell you a classic experience I had with him. When we came back from Brazil and we're walking into Miami Customs, a customs guy started to ring him hands together because him know I'm going find Peter Tosh with weed. So Peter walked up to him and said, I don't have any weed today, but here's the seed. I was thinking about
Wow.
listen, man, the guy cracked up. The custom guy cracked up.
So that was Peter. That was who he was.
Exactly.
That's Tosh. It's awesome because I do believe in both sides of the coin. You can't be militant 7 days a week, 24/7.
Come on, he was a very funny guy, Peter. Oh man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have a relationship with Bob?
Yeah, Peter, because the interview I did with him, there's a point where he says, if Whalers, would you go back to Whalers tomorrow? He said, yeah, because they were so tight, you see. They were really, the thing about that group is that collectively and individually, they were strong and perhaps too strong to stay together.
Right.
Because each man wanted to fulfill his own talent.
Yeah. Right.
And the only way that it could perhaps work is in an individual way. You look, the Beatles, all of those groups, man.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, the Stones are the only ones I think that have really stayed together all this time.
Right. Right.
But yeah, Peter and Bonnie would have been. I think that's what they were. They were kind of upset that life intervened to break up
Mm-hmm.
what had been this amazing triumvirate.
Right. Right. Right.
Because those brothers. I mean, the amount of work that they put in
Mm-hmm.
as a group
Mm-hmm.
in perfecting their craft. Bob in particular was even more determined than the two of them.
Right.
Because in terms of vocal skills, Bob had less
Right. True.
than Peter and Bun in terms of voice.
Yeah.
But he had a determination
Mm-hmm.
that to succeed that none of them had.
Yeah. You need that. You need that.
Yeah, he was driven. Bob was driven.
Right. He made up for what he and I realize it. Bob Marley himself has a sound. The Wailers have a sound. Everything for a reason, and I'm appreciative of. I don't want to say the demise of the Wailers, but the deconstruct, because I feel like if that never happened, if the sacrifices were made, if everybody decided, you know what, we're going to take one for the team, then there's so much classic music from Peter that we would have never gotten. There's so much classic music from Bunny Wheeler that we would have not gotten.
True.
We may have gotten all of the Bobs that we know because that's the front man, and those would have probably come up about, unless Peter said too soft. They have some Bob Marley song where kind of sweeter. Peter was probably like, nah. But I just feel like there's so much music we would have missed out on. So that is a deconstruct that I know the world at large probably are way more appreciative than those three gentlemen are.
Truly.
Love it, love it. Now, we talk about the business, because the music is one thing, the passion is one thing, but there's the business of music. And, I've listened to you speak to the Quincy Joneses of the world who are, moguls is what we'd consider them, because they're responsible for such great careers, not just popularity, but making millionaires out of so many. You talk about Ray Charles, who in himself was a business, before Jay-Z say I'm a business, you know what I mean? Ray Charles was a business. And then Chris Blackwell and people like those though we talk about the hard work of Bob, a lot of people credit the investment of Chris Blackwell as being instrumental in Bob's success. When you talk to these people who are not from Jamaica, they're not from reggae background, and you gather information from them, and then we think about our reggae outputs and distributors and so-called labels and so forth, what are we doing wrong? What are they doing outside of bankrolling that we are not doing that's limiting and inhibiting the success of our reggae music and reggae artists on a commercial scale?
I think it's just the lack of a really a business structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Americans have a very structured music industry.
Mm-hmm.
Each person, all aspects of it, have their roles defined quite clearly.
Right.
There's copyright protection. You have publishing companies. Jamaica still hasn't kind of kept abreast. The creative thing has been great,
Mm-hmm.
but we haven't had a parallel business structure going along with it. So we don't have managers.
Right.
We lack a kind, and I don't know what it is. That's why sometimes people keep talking about what's wrong with the industry. It's a kind of circular argument that keeps coming round
Mm-hmm.
and round and round,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing changes.
Right. Right.
The Jamaican government's filing cabinets are filled with reports of what to do. we have a situation right now for the first time in the history of the country where a prime minister has a younger brother who is in reggae. Mr. Holness's brother is Mighty Mystic.
Really? Like biological brother?
Yes, that's his younger brother.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know what I mean? And also, you have someone who has unparalleled experience in the music business in Minister Grange, Babsy.
Right. Right.
But I don't know what it is because Lloyd Stanbury wrote a very interesting book called Roadblock
Mm-hmm.
in which he laid out quite
Right.
methodically all the things that were ailing Jamaica in terms of realizing its potential in terms of its cultural industry. Previously, Portia
Mm-hmm.
had committees where they were trying to look at cultural industry.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, silence. We haven't heard anything.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And so, we are weak in that sense, and that people have also a feeling outside in the world that we are easy target because of things not set up.
Right. 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 Again, lack of structure, like you said.
Yeah, structure. And I don't know what it is. Why it keeps eluding us.
Mm-hmm.
Why we can't seem to, because all you need really, is to get some lawyers
Mm-hmm.
to write it for you and then take it to the government.
Right. Right.
Because government really should only be a facilitator.
Right. But if it's
I
that
really,
simple, how come we haven't done that yet?
God only knows, but
I had Lloyd Stanbury in here before, and we spoke about that conversation. Did come up about Mighty Mystic too, but I still wasn't 100% sure because I was like, are you sure this is biological brother versus is just a brother by nature, But apparently,
no, it's his younger brother, yeah.
wow. Wow. Is what I will say. I am scheduled because, like I said, there's certain folks I love talking to because it affords me an opportunity to learn. And scheduled, we haven't nailed down the date yet, but Lloyd and I are supposed to have a second conversation. We did have the first one regarding the book Reggae Roadblock, and we went into a lot of things. But we're gonna have another conversation. We're trying to figure out who we might want to bring on. Since it's virtual now and we're not in the studios, we can always bring on another person. So, if you're open, I would love to have you as a part of that conversation. It would be awesome. It would be fun.
Well, I guess, of course, it's when you plan to, whether I'm available then. But, yeah, because, Lloyd showed me the book, and in fact, I think I interviewed him about the book.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I'm sure it reached official channels in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what it is. We are able to organize athletics and it functions,
Mm-hmm.
and people like Mikey Bennett, who is a well-established producer, has drawn the parallel. That's what the music industry needs. Although athletics and music is not the same, but what I think he's alluding to is the structure,
Right.
which produces results in what you see now with the supremacy of the female athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And the classic example was when Usain Bolt was exceptional, because I remember years before he broke out,
Mm-hmm.
one of the La Beach, Baron La Beach, I think it was, said, Dermot, there's a guy coming named Usain Bolt.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be incredible. And so said, so down.
Wow.
So, I mean, Usain was just a one-off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Freak of nature.
Yeah. And so you see, and he's so popular, I mean, on the level of a Bob Marley, that's why he can now go into music.
Yeah. And outsell everybody.
Country youth.
Outsell everybody and don't sing nothing. I like it. It's amazing. It's amazing. Here's another convo that I have. We're talking about management the other day. and because sometimes I go on these rants, right, and I'll be put my disclaimers out. The views expressed by G Cole doesn't represent, and then I start ranting. So we've spoken about managers, and I have observed that some of the successful acts, reggae acts, especially those that we herald as great, they had representation that was not of Jamaica. So it's almost like there was a formula. Let me get myself a white manager. Let me get myself a Jewish accountant. Stuff like those.
There you go.
You know, and get certain things done. But when you talk, I had a conversation with two gentlemen from the Jamaican, I don't want to mess it up, but it's JFMAU, which is a union in Jamaica trying to help protect not just established reggae artists, but just the musicians in general. And they're making sure that they're represented. So, you know, people called me afterwards and people are reaching out to me afterward, and, you know, a little bit of skepticism and whatever. But I realized that people are skeptical when it comes to the optics. You know, I said, if it was a white lady sitting in front of me, then I wouldn't have gotten those questions and those responses. The question I'll ask is this: does having white representation, sometimes it's a question we dance around and we don't really want to get into, but does having white representation, does having a white face out there, because we're trying to break into places that are white territories. So a lot of time people like dealing with people they're familiar with and that look like them, but does having a white manager help? And if that be the case, I always wonder why even the white manager, the white representative, does not want to acknowledge that that is a leg up.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, it is one of the dilemmas, you know. I mean, because when you look at the history of Black American music, when they had the same difficulties where the music would not be accepted from them.
Right.
It was only accepted when white artists began to take an interest.
Right.
I mean, the interview that I have on the podcast coming, not Junior Walker is the next one, but the final one, Harvey Fuqua was the lead singer of the Moonglows, which incidentally was a group that the Wailers used to listen to. And when I told him about it, he was so amazed. But he was saying that Alan Freed used to give black acts a platform. And one of the prices that you had to pay was that he became co-writer of your tune. And Harvey says that to this day, Alan Freed's son was still getting royalties, and every time he saw Harvey Fuqua, he would apologize.
Wow.
So you see, it's a thing that's been happening for a long time, and it's a dilemma that we have been able to resolve because of the power of white people in terms of the marketplace.
Right. Can't avoid it.
Yeah. You know, and so when you have a white manager, you can push any door and go in, and people listen. You come in with a black man, and it's a different vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, total different. You know, it comes back down a lot of times because I feel like no matter where the conversation comes from or where the conversation goes, even if we talk about the creativity and the lack thereof, and we talk about, you know, representation or the lack thereof, I think it all stems from the lack of commercial success, because whatever you're doing, if it's selling, there is no issue. But if it's not selling, then you start dissecting and trying to figure out what the issue is. We see Bob's. I'm gonna put it. It's a Bob's an anomaly. Now, there are other people throughout the years. There's people. I don't think people are really conscious of how successful Jimmy Cliff is.
Yes.
You know, but the question I ask is this: on the grand scheme of things, is reggae lucrative?
Not in terms of what the sales are, the percentage of the sales. I mean, any music that is selling at 2%, is not the only person who has made, I mean, considerable money outside of somebody like Pete, Jimmy, is Bob Marley.
Right. Right.
He's still drawing down the largest percentages of whatever income this music accrues. You know, I don't think you see the music is not commercial music.
Right.
In the terms of which you understand what commercial music is.
Right.
The themes of reggae are too serious. Then it's not frivolity.
Yeah. It's not fun.
Yes, nice. So the fun music, the sexy music, those are the kind of styles that people can exploit financially.
Right. Right. Right.
But the conscious music, no, you know, because I remember back in the day, a lot of people say, man, reggae is too preachy. It's too preachy, man. It's too
Too deep. It's too deep.
Yeah, people don't want that. People want. You see, what a lot of popular music does is delude.
Yeah. Take you from reality real fast.
Exactly.
I got bills at home. Don't sing about it. So, you're absolutely right. And that's a conversation I've had a lot of times too, in terms of when people talk about the content, and I said, again, go back to the question I asked you earlier, the times, the 70s, the 70s, 80s, it was ripe for that type of music. So the times, facilitated the music. But,
right, because the 70s struggle. The 80s became self-indulgence.
Yeah. The 90s became turn up.
You know what I mean? And then layer on that cocaine in the
80s. Radio, my observation, and I could be wrong, is I think the internet and so forth have given a false equivalence. It's created an illusion for a lot of artists that they don't need radio anymore. You're on satellite radio, subscription radio, which I think is amazing, and it would be a blast if we could get more on it, because I think it would help a lot. And even the mainstream radio stations, when people say to even me, do you aspire to be on, the urban station? I keep saying no. If I was to go on mainstream radio, I want to be on one of those radio stations that don't currently play reggae, that don't currently cater to the reggae audience, and see if I could bring that to them.
Right, that's a very nice challenge, yes.
Yeah, but I get the impression that some of the artists don't appreciate radio as much anymore. They don't do the rounds as they used to. But
because it's been substituted by hype, you see.
Boy, that word hype.
Hype.
That word.
Remember what Public Enemy said, that song, Don't Believe the Hype.
Don't believe the hype. And it's become currency. I've said recently too, is that, we have folks right now, some people you could pay them in cash, some people you could pay them in hype. And I've seen what I deem quality artists substitute for the hype, especially because Instagram and social media, they give you that instant hype. Because the people who will accept the lower grade of music, they're normally the loudest people, and they'll hype it up on social media, but they are not downloading and they're not buying, right? So
precisely, exactly.
Hence, the followings don't translate into the sales. But,
yeah, that's so true, and that's one of the things that a lot of people have been measuring with this upsurge in dancehall. Is it going to really translate into selling units, or is the income going to largely come from streaming figures? So yeah, it's a very interesting thing to watch, because it's true, a lot of the people are really only looking for a free ride.
Yeah. Give it to me, and give it to me for free, please.
Exactly. They're not. So even the way people respond generally to social media, where they're interested more in pictures than content.
The fact that the fact that Instagram blew up was a testament to how wrong that was.
You see, Uh, so so people don't seem to have time for information. Or they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but at some stage you need context,
Need some
and
words.
that's where the word is.
Let me say this for the folks listening on Caribbean Radio HD right now. We're almost at the top of the hour for you guys. So I want to thank everybody that's rocking out. And again, listen, hit me up on social media at MyGCole, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for your chance to get that free George Nook's brand new album, Through It All. For those people listening on homegrownwithGCole.com, we continue up to the top of the hour. And of course, for those people who are on Caribbean Radio HD, when we go to commercial, feel free to hop over there, homegrownwithGCole.com. You can listen. Another thing, Dermot, is the Grammys. I always feel like the Grammys and the Jamaicans have always had a contentious relationship, never seen eye to eye. Because they've come to the conclusion, and I can't blame them, that winning a Grammy has very little to do with the music. And again, I always tie it back into radio because of what I think the importance of radio is. Do you think strengthening radio, mainstream radio, subscription radio in the arena of reggae will ever help to make the playing field of, let's say, winning a Grammy a more level playing field, or is that a ship that has sailed?
That's a good question. I think the strengthening mainstream radio, I think could be a significant factor, but the Grammys are essentially lobbying. It's the power of lobbying, and the thing is, what you have is I think hopefully it's changing, but you didn't have enough Jamaicans who were getting involved,
right,
in the actual behind the scenes work that's necessary and how it actually functions.
Right.
So people, for instance, are wondering why is reggae presented on the main stage. And every year it comes around, there's usually somebody beefing about it.
Right.
But I think more, because a lot of people used to wonder about the Marlins, so every time they enter an album,
and win.
They win. But although I think that's changing, but Ziggy Marley is very popular with the Grammy folks. He does a lot of work for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they volunteered to organize Tough Gang at Hope Road, set up back some. Yeah, he has a good working relationship with them.
Right.
And so is the name working.
Right.
In those instances. But I think the real solution is for more Jamaican people who are in the industry to really get involved.
Right.
And develop a network. Because that is essentially what it seems to be. The Grammys are a whole lot of lobbying that takes place.
Right.
And if you don't have the numbers inside there representing you, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. If you don't have a seat at the table, you're just not at the table. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's something that I hope, we speak about it a lot. So I hope a lot of people are grasping that. And I'll say this, because people have always spoken about the Marley influence at the Grammys. I'd love to do whatever I'm doing that well that my children benefit from it. So I'll just say that in regard to Bob. But I have never, I think the last one time, when not Welcome to Jamrock, when Halfway Tree won that Grammy over Music is Life for Beres Hammond. That was the one time when I was like, I think, and it might have been personal. It wasn't necessarily because I thought that Halfway Tree was inferior to Music is Life. It's just I was more in love with Music is Life. So at that one point in time, I was like, Beres got robbed, which, relatively speaking. But when Welcome to Jamrock won, I couldn't say anything. When Stephen Marley won his Grammys, I can't say anything. I think they were earned. Even when this last 3 Grammy Awards ago, when it was up against Stony Hill for Junior Gang and Chronix's Chronology, at that point in time, I would have. I thought the heavier body of work was Chronix's, but I wasn't disappointed when Stony Hill won because it was also a great body of work. You know, so so I will never discredit because I always feel like they do this music properly. Bob would be proud of how they do it, and if it's just about the Marley name, I mean, is Julian Marley adopted?
The name is still heavy, you know. I mean, yeah.
You know?
But Marley, the thing about Marley is extraordinary, man. Still, you know.
Yeah.
Still.
Well,
Sometimes I marvel, you know, because I spent a lot of time around Bob, and I knew he was going to be big, but I had no idea. Neither did he have an idea of how huge he was going to become.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough, here we are. And then, you know, you talk about content. I was having a conversation with Paul Campbell one time, and he talked about content being king. So I must say, I'm happy that you are putting the content out because you know you are one of my favorite time machines. You know, I to get back there because I've had, to me, like having a conversation with Bobby Digital was profound because I was able to. That's how I met. Garnet Silk died. I didn't get to meet him. I met him through Bobby. Dennis Brown died. I didn't get to meet him. I met him through Bobby. So it's the same thing with listening to
Bobby
your
was
work.
amazing brother. Yeah, man.
Oh yeah. You spoke to Garnet Silk, right? I listened to that one, and that one was a real nice conversation. When you were hearing Garnet Silk when he just came out, did you ever think he was going to be as beloved to the people or be who he is to the people as he became?
I didn't realize then that the extent that he would have captured people's imagination and interest, but I knew he had a sound. But I know that's the thing. When a guy is the same thing with Yaksta. When you have a sound and that individuality, it's just for you to work it.
Right.
You know, and Garnet had this kind of, you remember everybody used to call him Archangel, a kind of purity.
Right.
Wow. And an innocence, you know. And so, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, the thing of his death as well was extraordinary. It was an act. I mean, it was also an extraordinary act of bravery.
Right.
Because a lot of people will just say, "Well, boy, is my survival," you know.
Right.
But he didn't see it that way. He went back for his mother.
Right.
You know, and that's it. It was extraordinary.
Amazing.
Really extraordinary. I mean, to this day, when I think about it, I said, damn.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
But Garnet came with a glow, man. You know, and a lot of brothers who come through like that, it's a quality that after it's gone. And in fact, one of the things that Tony Rebel was saying was that Garnet's spirit is still very much here.
Wow. A rare figure. I remember I had that album, It's Growing, when I was in high school, and I tell people this all the time. You could have borrowed money from me, you could have borrowed anything from me, but you cannot borrow my Garnet Silk cassette. It's not happening. It's not happening. Oh, my Lord. And you know what? The final thing I definitely wanted to ask you. Well, even before I go to that, Garnet Silk, when he was alive, and let me not say when he was alive, because truth be told, these verbiages and stuff like that don't come out until after a lot of times he's gone. When people said he was poised to be the next. Of course, when it comes to reggae and many other things, there's room for only one. So he surpassing, maybe not. But do you think, based on his body of work and his trajectory, because a lot of people don't realize that album It's Growing was the only full-length Garnet Silk album that was done before he died. He has a lot of music and a lot of different compilations, but that was the only full-length recording before he died. Do you think he really was on that trajectory to at least, if not eclipse, but at least be on the same shelf, the same plane as a Bob Marley?
I think it would have been on the same plane, probably. You see, Bob Marley had had more than just being a great songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Going from Bob Marley had a spirit
Mm-hmm.
that I think Ziggy Marley summed it up once by saying that he had a spirit that was bigger than the body that it was in.
Wow. Wow.
Uh, so he had a spirit because that's one of the things that have why he has connected with so many people globally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That he had a spirit and people. I mean, I don't know what it is. It was just something that he had that connected him on a kind of global level that no other artist out of Jamaica has had the same kind of impact.
Right. Right. Right.
But I think Garnet could have, somebody who also had a tremendous amount of talent too and was cut short, Jacob Miller.
Yeah. Yep. Jacob Killer Miller.
Jacob had a lot of stuff. In fact, I used to see Jacob kind of, uh, tease Bob and, because I think that Bob also recognized that Jacob was competitive,
Right.
especially also on stage.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Jacob was a dynamite youth as well.
Wow.
But to get back to Garnet, yeah, Garnet had a quality there which was I thought it would have just gotten stronger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And providing his songwriting could have kept abreast,
Mm-hmm.
because that is the next thing. I mean,
Sustain.
your output,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the level of your output.
Right. Right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
The,
Consistently.
the song, my brother, is still paramount.
Wow.
Don't care what people say. The
Wow.
song,
Yeah.
the song is
And
a
that you cannot take
paramount.
away from Bob. That's something you can't take away from Bob is that there is no. It's almost like there's fun songs. There are songs that we put meaning on that he probably didn't have that meaning on. There are revolutionary songs. There are love songs. There are a whole bunch of different things to Bob's legacy and Bob's catalog. But in its weight in gold, they were all they all weighed the same. There was no weak ones. And
Yes, you see, I mean, Bonnie Wheeler used to say Bob Marley's a man pick up a song easy. And so, that level of output and the type of songs that he brought
yeah.
uh, just captured the imagination of people at the time.
Wow.
Look, the other day here in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
when the pandemic thing was raging,
Mm-hmm.
you saw how much more of Bob Marley's songs were downloaded.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw the statistics. I mean, I said, wow, the streams,
Yeah.
the streaming.
Still
Oh
necessary.
man,
He's still needed. He is still needed to this day. You mentioned Jacob Miller earlier. I had the luxury, the pleasure of talking to Inner Circle about, their career, their legacy, and even the early years of Jacob Miller. And I mentioned that, it must have been a challenge to have somebody who was a star come in and be a part of the band, and the band doesn't lose its entity and who the band is. But I was advised that Jacob wasn't a star prior to being in Inner Circle. That was news to me. I still to this day don't think so. I thought he was already a star. But being somebody in radio, was Jacob Miller that kind of a presence prior to Inner Circle, or did Inner Circle make him Jacob Miller?
no man. Jacob was the act man. Circle was just like the frame.
Right.
In the way Wheelers was the frame for Bob Marley.
Right.
Jacob had it, he had it. I mean, when he passed, I'm going to try and bring it back. I did a kind of tribute to him,
Mm-hmm.
which I got a lot of voices to just talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Leslie, Ibo Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
there was a brother who was around him, who spoke about him and how Jacob could wreck a show
Yeah.
in terms of his power.
Right, right, right. Stage presence.
Yeah, yeah. So it was just a quality that all he had to do,
Hmm.
sadly, and it never happened, was channel it.
Right, right, right.
You know, but I know Bob realized what his potential was. 'Cause I used to watch. I watched them once together, and how Jacob was kind of teasing him, and
Jakes, them call him.
Killer Miller.
Killer
Yeah, man.
Miller. And before I go, I'll ask you this. I remember radio jocks back in the day would pride themselves on being, able to break an artist or who whichever artist they broke, to the point where never heard you speak on it, but I've read to where a lot of people attribute a lot of the success of Bob Marley to you, in terms of you helping to break Bob Marley, right, and his music. My question for you really is, in 2021, do disc jocks and radio personalities still have that capability to break an artist?
Probably not, because again the thing has kind of changed in which social media has become a more powerful vehicle than radio. I just thought when I spent a lot of time around Bob. I used to see him almost every day. He came to my yard, had dinner. Um, Even sometimes they would almost face off like to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so he had, reflecting on it, I think, yeah, it's not the same thing now in terms of if you have social media, you can achieve a lot. But when I was around Bob, I said it was my duty to support this brother because I saw how big he was going to be.
Right, right, right.
Which is just being able to spot talent. You always have to see a guy one time,
Yeah,
Like
true.
how yesterday, like how I just saw, began to listen to Yapster,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I said, but wait, this youth here,
Wow.
yeah, I have to pay more close attention to him,
Wow.
because I see elements there
Yeah.
that are suggesting that this guy could be huge.
Yeah.
And somebody will soon see it if they haven't seen it already.
Right. 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 Wow.
You know, so it's just a question now of finding the talent. But I think, talent is such an extraordinary thing. I still think that you can find somebody who comes with a kind of magic
Mm-hmm.
that everybody sits up and starts to pay attention.
Right. Right.
But we haven't seen anybody. We see you see guys who are great at what they do,
Right.
but that's somebody that comes with that kind of spark.
Yeah. We saw some spark of magic in Chronics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
Chronic, he's working at his own pace.
Yeah.
He clearly has a kind of idea of how he sees himself and where he wants to go.
Right.
Um, so I think it's really his ball to play.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm looking forward to more music from him. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah,
it's our vibes. Trust me. I'm first of all, thanks for all that info because I'm so in awe right about now with our conversation. So it's like you said, Chronics and many are. Another person who I have high expectations for, and maybe it's just a personal thing, is Lila Ike.
yeah, she's she's got something special. It's just to nurturing it
Yeah,
and to bring it forward, because they women are in descendants, especially Caribbean women. Now it would seem from the Prime Minister Motley in Barbados.
yeah.
I saw her speech at the UN where she referenced "Get up, stand up"
Wow.
before the UN. As the
Yeah.
women are definitely on the rise,
Oh yeah.
and so these young sisters. But all they need to do is don't narrow your focus,
Yeah.
come wide,
Yeah.
and because a lot of people want to keep reggae pure and that pure. The only thing that is pure, man, is in the museum on the glass.
I love that. Nothing else is, and you're so right. You're so right. Even the essence of what reggae music is did not come from a pure place, so we have to just accept the fact that it's a combination of a couple
Yeah,
different
yeah,
things.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's not sociology, man. It's art.
I like that. I like that. And you know, I remember when even Coffee came on the scene, and people, because I think she's a tremendous talent. But there's something about Lila Ike. The verbiage I've used before is that I think she's the next Lauryn Hill. She just has it all. Now, however she disperses it, how often she does, to what degree she does, would be solely her. But from a talent standpoint and an
And
impact
she has
standpoint,
a what they call a tremolo in her voice,
yeah,
which is very
yeah,
affecting.
oh yeah,
And those are the things that she just needs to work with. Somebody else also tell me that Shensia is an amazing singer, can sing as good as Beyonce.
I don't know about that, but
Somebody told me that. Yeah, somebody else tell me that. I said, but wait. But maybe she'll get round to it after she used the dancehall vehicle to break out.
and that might be good because you know what, and you have to use what you've got. She's got the look, can't question that.
Oh yeah, very pretty girl.
Very pretty girl. She has an edge. You know what I mean? She does her thing in dancehall. We can't question. She make great records. If she does have that kind of vocal, then amazing. Because I've heard some songs where she's singing on, and it's okay. But if she can sing like Beyonce, then sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. That's where my money's going. I'm just saying. Trust me. Mr. Dermot Hussey, thank you so much. First of all, I've been binging on your podcast, which is called the Riffin Podcast with Dermot Hussey. Right? So
It's called Riffin Radio.
Riffin Radio.
One word.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
capital RIFFIN RADIO.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find it on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Stitcher, and iHeart.
Mm-hmm.
Every Friday.
Every
So
Friday is when you release. Okay.
Yeah, and what we did, what happened, one of the things I was very fortunate about being in Jamaica at the time that I was,
Mm-hmm.
so many important people came to Jamaica.
Right.
So I had so many interviews. There are just two interviews that Leonard Bernstein once came down to Jamaica and I got wind and turned up with a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
ready to interview him. And he said, listen, man, if you harass us, we leave. Himself and Jerome Robbins, the choreographer.
Right.
They came on the North Coast and we just had to quietly back away.
Right. Right.
But being able to interview all these people in Jamaica. So the Motown thing, 1975,
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Bristol had a celebrity Motown golf tournament in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
And I caught wind of it because who heap of Motown people were here, writers.
Wow.
And so I heard that Johnny Bristol was in the island, and I heard that Junior Walker from Junior Walker and the All Stars.
Right.
And then I heard that Harvey Fuqua, and so I knew about the Moonglows because all that music used to play heavily in Jamaica. That Motown thing.
Right.
I mean, it was a heavy influence in Jamaica, especially the rocksteady era.
Yep. That's all you heard. There was no reggae radio at the time. iRhythm wasn't out yet. So
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow. No man, I'm binging.
So the thing, for instance, with which is not this week. This week coming is Junior Walker's a short interview.
Mm-hmm.
But Harvey Fuqua was great, man. When he, tells you the stories about Marvin Gaye.
Wow.
About what that to deal with in those days as black acts, and of course working with how he said there would never be another Motown again.
Right.
It was just something special that happened at that time with that collection of people in this one space created that amazing body of music.
Wow. Never to be duplicated. Never to be.
Yeah, so we work with the podcast thing. I'll take it as far as hopefully a 7th season, and that will be it. And that we close it out with Bob Marley.
Wow.
With Gilberto Gil. I think Maxi Priest. Also, we did a program with Skill Cole and Mortimer Plano.
Wow. In one interview?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have a couple of things in the pipeline, as they say.
Well, I subscribed because I need things. I travel a lot, so I listen more podcasts when I'm out on the road versus music and stuff like that. And even for me, I'm about to hit the road pretty soon. So as I was listening to your stuff, I skipped around, and some of them I didn't touch because some of them are my airplane listings. So like the Peter Tosh, I calculate. I said, okay, this is 40 minutes. This is 40 minutes. I'm like, that's from my flight. So I've been dancing around, and I'm amazed by the content. If somebody had said to you back in those days, hey, keep those content because you're going to be releasing a digital podcast in 2021, you'd have probably told them they were crazy.
Yes, because, the thing that was a difficulty having to accept was that because of the licensing agreements with all these platforms, they don't allow you to play any music or they don't have to pay for it.
Yes.
So they limit it to something like a 3-second excerpt, and that's an insult. So I had to find a way to work around the music and just deal with the spoken word.
Right. Yeah, I have to deal with that too.
But hopefully one day when the situation changes,
the
programs could be presented in their entirety.
And it's coming. I think it is coming since especially since the podcast are now monetizing the stuff. So I'm sure agreements are going to be changing. I've heard some stuff with Libsyn, who is the podcast distributor I use. And I'm waiting on that too, because some of the original ones that I did, like my first maybe 10 episodes, they have music in them. But eventually, once the whole copyright issue started coming up with the Facebooks and the Instagrams and stuff like that, then just to avoid it, I just stopped putting the music in just to be on the safe side. But hopefully later on you won't have that kind of an issue, because I think it would be amazing to be able to hear your conversations being infused with the music of the guests that you're having on. That would be amazing. So, and I'll know when it happens because I'll be listening. Do me a favor, drop some social media for the masses so that they can know where to find you if you're on social media.
I'm on Instagram at Riffin Radio, and I'm on Facebook, and that's essentially it.
Facebook and Instagram.
Yes, because time, it is.
Trust me, I understand. Well, let me say, on behalf of everybody listening near and far, because I get messages, I get all kinds of stuff, and I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out.
Man, it's been a pleasure, man. I've done this in a long time, so great.
Thanks again, and I'm going to be putting this one up. This is my next episode. I'll probably be putting up, and I'll let you know when it's up.
All right, brother.
Thanks a million.
Take care and keep keep doing the good work, man.
Appreciate you. Will do. And you too. You too. And again, I'll be logged in. I'll be dialed in. I'll be listening all the way up to Bob because I want to hear that.
All right. Blessing.
All right. Much love.
Take
Thanks
care.
again. You too.
Much love. Yeah, bro.
All right. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the legend, Mr. Dermot Hussey. All right. One of my favorite conversations to date. I tell people all the time when they ask me, what's your favorite convo? Got a couple. This one right here. One of my faves. You know me. Love listening to the OGs. Love getting the blessings. Love getting it all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much for rocking with me. All right. I appreciate y'all big time. Everybody over there in Radio Land, I appreciate you. Much love. Much love. Much love. I gots to go.
Be safe, be kind, and be good to each other. My name is G. Cole, and this is Homegrown.